Part 1. Fortune Favors the Prepared. Chapter 1. Risk and Reward. How foreclosure works and why it matters. After you buy a house at auction, one of the first tasks on your list is to change the locks. You have no idea how many keys are out there or who has them. It's simply good practice. For me, the act is also symbolic. When we change the locks, it means our diligence has paid off. We've worked the process, and the process has worked. Changing the locks is the moment when the place is officially ours. I don't have to actually change the locks myself, of course, and neither will you. But in the early days, I would often do the job just to take a closer look at the place and get that little jolt of satisfaction that comes from knowing you've made a great investment. One particular sunny California day, I was doing just that, hunched over the front doorknob with a few tools, when I heard footsteps. I turned to see a man standing on the walk. "Excuse me," he said. "We're here to do the home inspection?" "I think you might have the wrong place," I said. "We just bought this property at auction and didn't schedule one." The man's face fell. "I'm a realtor," he said. "My clients were trying to buy the place, a short sale." A short sale occurs when the bank agrees to let a struggling owner sell a home for less than is owed on it. The homeowner gets to avoid having a foreclosure on their record, and the bank gets to avoid the hassle and uncertainty of the entire foreclosure process. In this case, it was obvious the short sale hadn't happened in time. The home had gone to auction, where we'd become the lucky new owners. Still, here I was, standing face to face with a buyer. We'd just bought the place hours ago. But who was I to say no to the winds of fortune? "Write up a cash offer," I told him, "and we'll look at it." We did more than look at it. We accepted it immediately. 2 weeks later, the deed arrived in the mail and we closed the sale. We made $40,000, and I never got past the front door. This story perfectly illustrates the backstage pass offered by auction sales. By entering into the foreclosure process early, you get access to better deals. In our case, that meant buying the property for tens of thousands of dollars less than market price. It then gave us a chance to turn around and sell it right away to someone willing to pay more. What this story doesn't tell us, however, is exactly why buying at auction offers such great advantages. To understand that, it's helpful to first understand what the foreclosure process looks like. The foreclosure process. Backstage real estate passes don't just fall out of the sky. If they did, everyone would have them, and they wouldn't be worth anything. To understand why buying at auction can be so effective, you need to understand what a foreclosure is and how it works. Foreclosure is a legal process. It's a series of events that can happen over time, and it begins when someone borrows money to buy real property, often a home, but it could be another type of property too. In this book, we speak in terms of single-family residential homes, but the principles can apply to almost any kind of real estate. The easiest way to understand the foreclosure process is through a simple example. Let's assume that the lender is a bank. Let's call it Bankopolis. And the property in question is a residential home lived in by the homeowner, Dave. When Dave arranged his mortgage, he signed a contract agreeing to pay back the money he owes Bankopolis at an agreed-upon rate. Dave also used the home he was buying as collateral, insurance, essentially, for the bank to make sure they could still get their money back if Dave doesn't keep his promises. Using the house as collateral means that the new home now has a lien against it, and Bankopolis has a legal right to take possession of the home if Dave doesn't make his mortgage payments. As long as Dave keeps up his end of the bargain, everything is fine. If he misses a payment, however, things start to shift. The process and timeline vary from place to place and bank to bank, but here's an overview of what happens if Dave starts to drop the ball. 1. The first missed payment. One day, Dave faces an unexpected crisis. He loses his job. It's not long before he's burned through his savings and soon he can't make the agreed-upon mortgage payment. So he doesn't. At this point, it's not the end of the world. Many mortgages have a grace period, often 10 to 15 days. Bankopolis will likely send a letter that says, "Dave, you didn't make your payment. We need to sort this out." If Dave simply makes the payment, all is well. 2. The second missed payment. If Dave doesn't pay up, however, and he misses another payment, things move further along. Bankopolis is A. going to start to worry, and B. add late fees to what's owed, as outlined in the mortgage. Now that he's more than 30 days behind on his payments, Dave is likely to find Bankopolis becoming more concerned. He'll probably get phone calls and notices. Still, things aren't disastrous for Dave. The bank would rather get paid, and Dave would like to keep his house. Both parties really want this to work out. If Dave pays the overdue amount, plus any fees, he's square again. His credit record may take a hit, but no one's going to take his house. 3. The third missed payment, and beyond. But if Dave doesn't settle up, the new machinery starts to grind into action. When Dave misses another payment, that's 3, he's going to get another notice, and it's more serious. After 3 to 6 months with no payment by Dave, the time varies depending on Dave's mortgage, his bank, the state he lives in, and the local economy and legal system, Bankopolis is going to enter a public notice called a Notice of Default, or NOD, or a lis pendens, which is fancy Latin for suit pending, with the county recorder's office. That notice officially states that Dave has defaulted on his mortgage and the property is scheduled for foreclosure. The notice lists an auction date when the house will be sold. Unless Dave settles up before the auction, his mortgage is going to be foreclosed on. That means Bankopolis is going to take possession of his home, as stated in the mortgage contract. And Dave, of course, is going to have to move out. Note: you can see samples of real notices of default at our resource site at biggerpockets.com/foreclosure bonus. Opportunities in the foreclosure timeline. This process is hard on everyone. It's tough for Dave in particular, but it's the law. The most important thing to note right now, however, is that it's a process. It takes time, and that time creates opportunities for other people, like you, for example, to help both Dave and Bankopolis. Broadly speaking, there are 2 types of foreclosures: judicial and non-judicial. Both create an opportunity for investors to buy distressed real estate. In this book, although the basic principles apply to both, we're speaking specifically about non-judicial foreclosures, those in which a judge does not have to rule on whether a foreclosure process can proceed. That power is given to a trustee who will auction off the property. For our purpose, there are 3 specific points in the foreclosure timeline where investors like you tend to get involved. Each is different, and each has its pros and cons. 1. Before the foreclosure auction. No one wants a foreclosure. Both the borrower and the lender are better off if things work out. In a foreclosure, both parties effectively lose something. Because foreclosure sucks for everyone, there are any number of arrangements that can be made before the property goes to auction. That saves everyone a lot of hassle and saves the borrower a serious blemish on their credit record. The person who approached me while I was changing the locks had been hoping to make one of those arrangements. They were trying to buy the home directly from the owner before the foreclosure, saving everyone the pain of going all the way. Some companies and individuals specialize in this approach. They choose to enter early in the foreclosure process. There are advantages to this. There may be less competition, for example. Prices can be better too, and you get to help both parties avoid an expensive, painful, and longer route to auction and beyond. We've always found, however, that it takes a tremendous amount of time and effort to identify such properties and connect with the homeowners. There's a lot of legwork, a lot of selling and deal-making. Homeowners were certainly not always happy to talk to us, and even if we found one who was interested, it often didn't work out. In the end, the reward rarely seemed to justify the investment of so much time and effort. But if you're one of those people who has the ability to pull it off, getting involved before the foreclosure auction creates the ultimate win-win for you and the seller. All said, we still focus on auction. 2. After the foreclosure auction. Of course, there are opportunities at the other end of the foreclosure process too, after properties have gone to auction. Not every property sells on the courthouse steps. The ones that don't are repossessed by the lender, often the bank. Banks, however, aren't in the real estate management business. They like to lend money to people to buy homes, but they don't like to own homes for long. So when a property fails to sell at auction, the bank generally likes to find a way to sell it and get at least some of their investment back. But banks are not realtors. They usually want someone to help with the sale, so they get a real estate brokerage to do the job. REO, or real estate owned, is the label given to properties that go to auction but don't sell and are then turned over by the bank to real estate professionals. This is how we first tried to buy properties, as I described in the introduction, but we could never seem to do a deal. Buying REO properties is easier and lower risk than buying at auction because the bank has to pay off any liens on the home and you can fully inspect the property. As a result of those benefits, the competition is fierce. For us, though, the reward simply wasn't there. 3. The auction sweet spot. There are people who build businesses around the previous 2 points in the timeline and do just fine. They are legitimate ways to invest in distressed real estate. For us, however, buying on the courthouse steps has always offered the best balance of risk and reward, the right level of competition, and the best fit for our temperament. Compared to buying REO properties after foreclosure, auctions offer a unique advantage by giving you an entry point that's upstream of the highly competitive real estate action. By buying before the brokers and agents and mortgage brokers and lawyers get involved in the usual way, you get a chance to buy properties at a discount. Compared to buying before foreclosure, auctions offer a greater return on your time and a much more enjoyable process than knocking on the doors of homeowners who are going through one of the most difficult moments in their life. Every point in the foreclosure timeline offers potential rewards. With each reward, of course, comes a corresponding risk. For us, buying at auction was always the best combination of both. It was the sweet spot of the foreclosure timeline. The risks of buying at auction. Buying foreclosures at auction may be thrilling, and it may be a backstage pass to real estate bargains. But there is a price to pay, and that price is uncertainty. To succeed in the business, you need to understand the risks and their corresponding rewards in detail. We look at 5 key risks for every property. Risk number 1. List accuracy. Although it's improving, the auction business is notoriously low-tech. Most auction notices are printed on paper and posted at courthouses or other locations. To get access to that information, most people buy foreclosure lists from a service. These services are offered by businesses that send out people to gather the printed information or search through online records, compile and digitize them, and then sell the information to potential property buyers. The first risk you face in buying foreclosures, then, is simply the quality of the information on the list. While foreclosure listing services are legitimate, valuable businesses, they face the same challenge as any business that turns printed data into digital data. Mistakes happen. There could be typos, scanning errors, misprints. There could be a zero missing on a price, a number missing on an address. The attorney that made the posting may have entered Baker Street instead of Baker Avenue. We know people who have bought a house that wasn't there, or bought the wrong house. Really. That's why we always follow our 5-step process, so we can find those mistakes before we get to auction. Risk number 2, property condition. If you want to buy a home sold after auction, an REO sale, you have the right to look inside it. You can walk through it, poke around, get it inspected, and see every detail with your own eyes. That's not the case for homes at auction. When a house is sold at auction, the intent is that the property condition, at least on the inside, is a guess. That makes the state of the property at risk. We've bought properties only to find out that the owners who defaulted on the mortgage also trashed the place, or ripped out and sold all the cabinets, plumbing, and fixtures, or took a hammer to the HVAC system because they were angry at the bank. Conversely, we've also bought properties that were stunning inside, complete with granite countertops and expensive trim and appliances. The point is, you can't always know for sure. Fortunately, there's a way to mitigate this risk and price it into your calculations. More on that in the chapters ahead. Risk number 3, occupancy. Properties are either occupied or unoccupied when you buy them. A vacant property makes for a much quicker process. You can change the locks and start on any improvements almost immediately. The sooner you do that, the sooner you can resell, rent, or refinance the property. An occupied house carries additional unknowns. Squatters, tenants, or previous owners may be living there. Occupants can take time to evict, which slows things down. If the previous owners, who stopped making the payments, triggering the foreclosure, feel that they were wrongly foreclosed on, they can file a lawsuit against the lender. We've had houses tied up for years while the process gets sorted out. In those cases, you can't take possession and get on with your plans. Of course, existing occupants can be an upside as well. They might be the perfect tenants for your new rental property. In a later chapter, we'll look at a number of clever strategies for identifying occupancy. Risk number 4, clear title. It's tempting to see foreclosure as a simple process involving one person who didn't make payments on one mortgage. In reality, there can often be more than one lien on a home. A lien, for our purposes, means that someone has used their home as collateral to borrow money. Each lien has a priority position. A first mortgage, for example, takes priority over a second. Some liens are extinguished in foreclosure. Others need to be paid. This is by no means a deal breaker, but it does mean we need to be informed before bidding and factor what we know, or don't, into the price. If you bid $150,000 for a home at auction, for example, there could be other liens, property taxes, or other loan fees that need to be paid. Also, remember that technically loans, not properties, are foreclosed on. It's possible to buy a lien in second position at an auction and still not actually own the house. The good news: there are tools and steps to help you explore title and the financial story behind every property you buy. More on that later. Risk number 5. Valuation. The biggest risk of all, but also the biggest tool at your disposal to manage all the risks above, is valuation. That's coming up with the answer to the all-important question: what is this property worth? When you don't know in advance the condition of the property, the quality of the finishes, or even the floor plan, it's hard to estimate value. Your entire reason for buying at auction is to buy for less than you would otherwise. But how much should you spend? In truth, you never know exactly how much to spend. But as you'll see, you can make very educated guesses. The rewards of buying at auction. Fortunately, there are two great things about the risks of auction buying. The first is that you can manage those risks by committing to a great process. The second is that the risks deliver rewards. Reward number 1: speed. When you buy a home in the usual way, as a property listed on the MLS, purchased through an agent, things take time. You write an offer. It gets signed back. You sign it back again. Eventually you do a deal, but escrow might take a few weeks. The closing could be months off. You visit the lawyer. You get the keys. Finally, the property's yours. When you buy at auction, all of that can happen in hours. After a successful bid, you can often change the locks that afternoon and get to work on the home. Speed can be a disadvantage in that you don't always have as much time as you'd like to do research. For the most part, however, it's an advantage and a thrill that you can do a deal and become an owner on the same day. Reward number 2: face-to-face negotiations. Buying a home through the MLS generally means using an agent or a middleman of some sort. You rarely deal directly with the actual property owner, and you seldom see your competition. Offers go back and forth in writing, with one party offering, the other countering. Not only is this a clunky, time-consuming system, but the lack of transparency means you can end up bidding against yourself. Auctions are different. Your competition's right there. They might be standing right beside you. The person with the power to accept the bid is right there too, even if it is a guy on a skateboard. The process is face-to-face, and the stakeholders are present. You might not know as much about the property as you would with a traditional purchase, but at least you know who the players are. Reward number 3: property quality. Foreclosures are associated with buying run-down or otherwise deficient properties, but that's not always the case. There are also plenty of beautiful homes owned by people who simply couldn't make the payments. There are properties owned by military families who've been restationed too quickly to sell. There are properties who, for reasons known only to them, simply changed their minds and walked away. Whatever the reason for the foreclosure, there are few experiences in real estate as exhilarating as opening the door on a house you just bought and discovering that it's beautiful. It's well designed, expensively appointed, and immaculately clean. They aren't always that way, but it happens. Reward number 4: helping. Buying at foreclosure also gets a bad rap due to its supposed impact on the property's community. In our experience, this is completely unjustified. Buying a foreclosed home is often a big help to the neighborhood. Neighbors love it when we take a boarded-up house with a lawn full of tall weeds and turn it back into something that creates value for everyone. It might also surprise you to know that sometimes you're helping the homeowner who was foreclosed on. Occasionally, the owner is still in the home when we buy it. In those cases, they might become the new tenants. It's never nice to be foreclosed on, but we've received letters of thanks from people who've been able to stay in their homes even after losing ownership. Reward number 5. Your own home. Most people aren't buying foreclosures for themselves, but I've met people at auction who do, and I just became one. I recently bought a second-family home in Texas, where I live for half the year, and I bought it at auction. The person who bought it originally, the first owner, lived in it for less than 6 months, then defaulted. When I bought it, it was still covered by the home builder's warranty and was in almost perfect condition. The walls had to be painted, but that was it. The flooring, the appliances, everything was perfect. My family and I now have a beautiful second home that I bought for 75% of what it would cost on the open market. Reward number 6. Buying at a discount. The most obvious benefit of buying on the courthouse steps is price. It's the real reason we're taking the previously mentioned risks and doing the legwork. The Backstage Real Estate Pass lets you buy homes for as little as 50 to 60 cents on the dollar. That discount is about more than simply buying low so you can sell high. In addition to return on investment, a discounted price offers its own list of additional benefits, including margin of safety. Buying at a lower price gives you breathing room. You have a moat in case prices drop, the property has unexpected problems, or you have to evict a resident. Easier resale. Buying a house at 40% off means you're not locked into a high sale price to get your money back. If the market changes, you can afford to sell at a lower price. If your situation changes, you're not stuck with something you can't get your money out of. Paying top dollar can lead to a cascade of problems, such as overspending on renovations to try to increase the sale price. Buying at a discount gives you our second favorite benefit after profit. Options. Rent flexibility. You don't have to sell what you buy. You can choose to rent, and sometimes an occupied property may already have the perfect tenants. Buying at a lower price gives you breathing room in your search for tenants. It allows you some flexibility if the rental market tightens and you need to lower the rent to find tenants. Buying at auction is the ultimate hedge. It's the best way we know to consistently buy real estate at a discount, which not only increases your returns, but also gives you much more security in your business. The risk-reward connection. There are 2 key things you need to keep in mind about the risks and rewards of buying foreclosed homes at auction. Remember them, and your odds of success will skyrocket. First of all, the risks create the rewards. If it was simple, easy, and risk-free to buy properties on the courthouse steps, everyone would do it, and there'd be no deals. It's as simple as that. That's how you learn to fall in love with some of the problems of buying at auction. Each risk, each potential problem, is what keeps away the people who aren't willing to do the work. It's what keeps prices lower than they are elsewhere. It is, without question, what allows you to profit. Second, risks can be managed. That's the objective of our 5-step process, which we outline in the next part of the book. We manage risks by coming up with a price that reflects the unknowns of buying at auction. If your research suggests problems in any of the areas above, the amount you're willing to pay will be lower. Lesson: risks create rewards. Your goal is to price risks into the valuation of the property so that you can come up with an amount you're willing to pay for the property that allows you to earn a profit. That's what the bulk of this book is about. Learning to put together the tools, the people, the information, and the reliable process in a way that lets you manage risk. The more you stick to the process, the lower your risk will be. Chapter 2. Tools of the Trade. Outfitting yourself as a courthouse warrior. The 5-step process